Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jack Lippert. I'm a consultant for the Syracuse Sport Business Conference, and thank you for tuning in to episode 6 of the digital series. First and foremost, I want to thank both our moderator and featured panelists for taking time out of their busy schedules to talk to all of us today. Joining us as moderator is highly esteemed SU alumnus Kevin Belby, undergraduate class of 2013 and graduate class of 2016. He is currently the Vice President of Sports Broadcasting and a talent agent at the Montag Group. Our featured panelist is also an SU alum who has made a tremendous impact on the sports media landscape. So without further ado, I'll let Kevin introduce today's guest. Kevin, thank you for being here with us today.
Yeah, thank you guys. And just a couple things off the top from me. I really do want to thank everybody from the Syracuse Sport Business Conference. You know, I saw over a year ago, you guys announced you guys were going to do the conference at Turning Stone. I was so excited. It was long overdue for something for Syracuse to have something like this. I was sick and tired of always hearing about the Michigan Sport Business Conference. And I'm really proud, you know, as an alum to see that you guys didn't just pack it up and go home, you know, when the coronavirus hit. I think that these weekly sessions you guys are doing are awesome. So I couldn't be, so thanks to Ben and Jack and the rest of the team. And I couldn't be more excited to speak to David Levy today. You know, David Levy is somebody that I personally look up to and have a little bit of a history with, because I remember when I was a Syracuse student, he was running Turner and took a half hour out of his day to give me advice and for me to pick his brain. And, you know, the thing that he said to me was, you know, there's always the time to be able to make time to give back. And I think that's something we all should do. And even I know there's some young alums on this call, seniors who recently graduated. You guys can even be helping the freshmen and sophomores. So I just think that's what makes Syracuse University special to me. So David, really excited to talk to you and really dive into what makes David Levy David Levy. First, you know, just kind of kicking it off. It's been a crazy couple of months. I know we were actually supposed to get together for coffee, and the next thing we were all quarantined. So that happened. Sports were canceled. Hopefully they're coming back soon. And now obviously a lot of protests all across the country after the murder of George Floyd. You know, a huge push for racial equality, which is it's needed. And a lot of positive conversations about how to improve things, which won't happen overnight, but a lot of tough conversations being had. So just curious what your thoughts are about where we are as a country right now and everything that's happened in the last few weeks.
Well, first of all, Kev, thanks for Syracuse and the whole sports management organization for having me. I also was excited about Turning Stone. Excuse me. I was supposed to be there as well. I was going to be the keynote, so I'm glad at least we're getting something done on this Zoom, the new way we're all communicating now through Zoom. You know, you mentioned, you know, this time we are in this country right now. And, you know, being from New York, you know, we're New Yorkers. New Yorkers have been through a lot. You know, we've been through 9/11. We've been through financial crises. We've been through Hurricane Sandy, and we get through it. This one is strong. I mean, the pandemic, number one, and then of course the racism and the riots that we're seeing and the protesting, which, you know, you mentioned it in your opening. You know, the murder of an unarmed man is just horrific of where we are. And I think the one thing this country needs more than ever is leadership, and hopefully at every level. You know, obviously at the top of you know, our president, but all the way down through CEOs, through ourselves, to help guide, you know, us through this and through the people through all this. But as I said, we're New Yorkers. We'll get through this too, and I'm looking forward to it. So, and I'm looking forward because I think this is the most important thing: is that sports bring back community and sports relieve people and give it. It's the relief valve that I think we all need. So as soon as sports gets back, I think it'll be better for this entire country.
Yeah, I think we're all looking forward to that. And since this is the Syracuse Sport Business Conference, you know, when did you, David Levy, first discover your passion for sports? Was that always, you know, the path that you wanted to go down in your career?
You know, I played sports. I played hockey for 17 years, and I actually played at the Syracuse club team, which we played out at the fairgrounds. And my senior year, I played all 4 years captain. And, you know, listen, I fell in love with sports. I'm a competitive guy in general, but I never knew I wanted to be in the sports business world. But I got a little taste from the club level at Syracuse, believe it or not, when we needed to raise money, and I had to sell patches to Miller Beer on our jerseys and get free kegs to get fans come to the stadium. Had to understand how to pay the referees, how to understand how to pay about ice time. I started understanding the whole business side of it. You know, I didn't know I was going to enter into the sports business side, but I always had a passion for sports.
Awesome. Well, that's great insight into a little bit of your Syracuse experience, but take us back. Like, why did you go to Syracuse, and what were those 4 years like for you? What else were you involved on campus, and what do you think about when you think about your time at SU?
You know, I was there and I saw you. You graduated in 2013, which kind of pissed me off. I have T-shirts that are older than you are, being that I graduated in '84. But you know, I was there when the Carrier Dome was being built. You know, so I didn't get to see the Manley Field games for the basketball, but I was there when Joe Morris. That's a great trivia question, by the way. Joe Morris ran back the first opening kickoff for a touchdown, and the Carrier Dome. So the first play ever in the Carrier Dome was a run back for a touchdown. And I was there, and I slept out for tickets for Syracuse basketball for the student section. And where that was, it was actually courtside way back then, when students got to sit down low and enjoy those games of the Marty Heads of the world and the Danny Shays. I also got to see Pearl Washington play. But I was also part of the sports community, as I mentioned. You know, even though it was a club league, I did feel a part of Syracuse's sports, alumni, if you will, and a passion for it. So, you know, Syracuse was great for me. I still have friends, very close friends from Syracuse. I think the town, the community, the school is loyal. And I will tell you this, you know, in this business that we're in, you and I, Kevin, the media business, I think Syracuse has a very strong, passionate alumni that are always trying to help and give back.
No question. You know, and talking about alumni giving back, I wanted to ask you about networking. So it's kind of a scary topic. It's so simple, but it's also so nuanced. How did you network, you know, when you were coming out of school? And then on a larger scale, you know, give us a lot of young alums, young students on the call. How can they network, effectively network?
Well, you know, listen, when I did it, when I feel like I'm like in the horse and buggy ages, but, you know, there wasn't really, you know, there wasn't the internet. You know, I remember carrying over those code cards, you know, when we had the computer classes and we had to punch holes in the cards. But, you know, listen, it's hard work, stay late, ask a lot of questions. But, you know, the most important thing I think is really know who you're talking to, do research. You know, we had to go to the library or you know, find books around certain companies. Today, you just Google the person, Google me, Google you. You know, you're all in there, and the companies are in there. And so, you know, it's very easy to find out about companies and about people, and use that to your advantage. You know, it's that simple. And then I would say, you know, listen, from a networking interviewing process, you know, everybody has this goal, and I learned this very young. Everybody has this goal to run out and try to interview with the CEO of the company, because they get the CEO, they get to say they got the CEO interview. But actually, you know, you want to interview with a lot of other people first and learn how to interview. It is a process, and you get better at it as you stink. And you certainly don't want to do your first interview, the job that you really want. You want to interview later for that, because you want to make sure you make all the mistakes earlier. And I think that's one of the things I try to help graduates that are looking for jobs is to understand that, you know, you got to practice the interview process, and it takes time.
Do you remember your interview at Turner? You joined Turner at 24. Do you remember what it was like, and how did you get your foot in the door there?
I was at Turner 32 years, but prior to that, I actually had an internship job at Syracuse while I played hockey at a small advertising agency. At the time, it was called Oakmont Advertising. It then turned into Mark Russell Associates. And I think it was sold. I don't think it's even up in Syracuse anymore. So I jumped into the advertising agency business first, back in New York. And that experience at Syracuse helped me get my entry level job, my $9,000 a year job. And then, I realized very quickly after I was on the buying side, I found out that people make a lot more money on the selling side. And so I tried to get a sales job. And I went around to a lot of different companies, asking, and it was at that moment that was like 85, 86. This new thing out there was called cable. Nobody knew what cable was. And that's and on the buying side, I was buying, cable advertising. But anyhow, so I was interviewing a lot of different places, and every single person said to me the same line. Listen, you're smart. It looks like you know what you're doing, but you have no sales experience. Get some sales experience. And I heard that line about 5 or 6 times. And after the 6th time, the interview in a company called Cable Networks Inc. It was a small cable selling company for cable systems. The guy says it's almost the same line. And before he spit it out, I go, listen, are you going to tell me I need sales experience? And he started laughing. I go, someone's got to give me sales experience before someone's got to take the risk at me. He gave me the job, and I worked at Cable Networks Inc. for about a year, which was selling local cable advertising. And I was doing such a good job because I was selling CNN locally that actually Turner, CNN, called me up and hired me away from CNI because I was taking money away from them. So I was there for 32 years. I started there in 87. I had 22 different jobs at Turner over those 32 years. I went through 3 acquisitions when Time Warner bought Turner in 96, when AOL bought Time Warner in 2001, 2002, and then when AT&T purchased in 2016, October 2016, purchased Warner Media. So it was a great experience, and I wouldn't give it away for anything.
Yeah, a lot of great, I think, lessons and nuggets in there. One, I just want to reemphasize, because I know a lot of young alums will say to me, like, these potential employers are telling me I don't have enough experience. Well, how do I get the experience? But I mean, I think your story is a perfect example. You only need one company to say yes, and you need to convince one company to say yes, and then maybe you can become the president of Turner Sports. So, and you joked a little bit about how you started out making $9,000 a year. I think everybody on the Zoom here probably loves sports, but we also know it's a tough business to work in, a lot of hours, and the pay is not great, especially to start. So what's the key, would you say, for maintaining a positive working environment in sports?
Sports is a community in itself. Whether you're on the front of the camera, behind the camera, whether you're selling and advertising, or whether you're sponsorship sales or ticket sales, or in the business side, the operations side, it's a community. And there's good news and bad news in that. The good news is that a lot of people know each other. It's a small community, and you can go from one side to the other side and have a lot of relationship. The bad news is nobody leaves it. And it's really sometimes worse that you don't leave it, because you get trapped and you don't get to experience some other things. I'll give you an example for me personally. In 1990, Ted Turner went after the NFL. The first time the NFL was going to go on cable television, and it was Sunday Night Football, believe it or not. And we split the package with ESPN, 9 games on TNT and 9 games on ESPN. We had the first 9 games, they had the back 9 games. And at that time, at that particular moment in time, there was no Turner sales organization for sports. There was one sales organization selling all of its properties, whether you were selling National Geographic, whether you were selling movies, Andy Griffith, or Braves baseball, you were selling it all. And I wrote a business plan for Ted and the team of why we needed a sports division once we got football, because the CPMs in NFL football were a lot higher than everything else. And I didn't want to have that tainted with the sales organization. I explained the importance of having a sports sales organization and how much sports we had and so forth and so on. And believe it or not, they liked my presentation, and made me head of Turner Sports sales. And I did that with the Goodwill Games and so forth. And then in 1994, so I did that for 4 years, 1990, 1994, we had the Goodwill Games in St. Petersburg, Russia. And the president at the time of Turner, a gentleman named Steve Heyer, said, listen, you did a great job in doing Turner Sports sales, but I want you to now, the most important thing for our company is to run international, to build out our international business. And I said, that's great, but I'm not interested. And he goes, well, I'm asking you to do this for me. And I went home crying, thinking, oh my God, I have the greatest job in the world. I'm selling NFL football. I have the Goodwill Games. I have Braves baseball. I have SEC college football. And now he's asking me to run international. Ew. I thought I was getting fired, And, I went around asking a lot of smart people in the business, how do you turn down your president of your company? And they said, you really can't. And so, I went kicking and screaming, leaving this incredible thing called sports. But what he told me was, he said, listen, David, you're a sales guy right now. I'm asking you to run all of international. You're going to become a manager. You're going to become a general manager. You're going to learn how to buy radio stations in Germany and start businesses in China and help us grow our brands outside the United States. And this is going to take you out of the sales business and into more of a business P&L opportunity. And I know you hate going and leaving, but trust me, this is going to be a great thing for you. And he was right. I left Turner Sports sales to go run international that had no sports. But I learned a whole new side of it and a new business and how to become a general manager, not just a sales guy. Because a lot of times salespeople don't cross into management. They stay as salespeople. And I went and did international for 8 years. I only thought I was going to do it for 3. I opened up, CNN around the world, Cartoon Networks around the world. I bought a television station in China, a music station in Germany. I launched CNN Espanol in Latin America. And I came back once AOL bought us in 2003 to come back to be the president of Turner Sports, not just Turner Sports Sales, but Turner Sports, which was all the production, acquisitions, talent, marketing, and sales, and stayed in that job until I became the president of all of Turner, down the road. So my point is that, the good thing about being in sports is it's a community. The bad thing is that people never leave, but sometimes you need to leave to come back and to grow.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think a lot of people who work in sports will at some point in their career have to give pitches, have to give presentations. And also there are times when they need to step up and tell their boss, like, hey, this is how I feel. This is what I think we should be doing as a company. And both of those can be a little bit scary. So I want to focus on something you said. Like, what was that pitch to Ted Turner like, about how to start a whole Turner Sports division? What was your mindset then? And obviously you nailed the pitch because Turner Sports.
Well, my mindset, like anybody else on this call, if you believe it in your heart, go do it. What's the worst thing that can happen? The answer is no. But, if you don't try, if you don't take risks, I have this saying that I say to everybody, if you manage your job every day just to keep your job, eventually you won't have your job. I mean, it's just that simple. And so, you have to take risks, and that was a risk. But, I understood the need of what a sports sales organization would be. Coming from the buying side, I knew that networks had it. And if we wanted to compete with the networks, we needed it. And, I took a lot of time putting a presentation together. By the way, I had no idea what I was doing, and surprised that, that it went over that well, to be honest. But I had a passion, and I knew it in my heart. And that's what drives me. And by the way, that's what should drive everybody if they have a passion to do something, but it doesn't mean, if you're starting out, and I also say this to graduates, your first job, means you're just going to get money. You have to get a job, right? So I always tell people, get into the industry you want, but you don't have to go to the company you want, right? Then your second job is where you want to go. So let's use sports, for example. You don't know whether you want to be in the front of the camera, behind the camera, selling, sponsorships, business side, marketing side. So just get into one of those, right? Then the next thing is you jump over into the area that interests you. If you want to be behind the camera, you want to produce, you want to edit, you want to sell, you want to ticket sales in a franchise, you want to be on the operations side, you jump, your second job is where you want to jump to the career path. But then I always say the third job is the most important, because that's when you go to the company and the area that you really want. So your first two is really exploratory. And don't worry where you are, or what company you're in. It's about learning. And that's most important. But your third opportunity, mine, if you go down, my third was Turner. And I stayed there for 32 years, right? So my first two were to get me into the company that I thought was going to be the big growth engine for me. And it turned out it was. I mean, it doesn't for everybody, but I do say the third job in my mind, and people that are listening today, I think the third opportunity is the one that you need to concentrate on. The first two, is really money, and then what area you're interested in.
I love that, because I think so many students or young graduates focus on that first job like it's going to be their last job, but really it's their first job. And actually, something you told me, I think when we probably met 4 or 5 years ago in your office, was, I'll never forget, you said you should start looking for your second job on the first day of your first job, and just always thinking about the future. So I'll never forget that. You talk about making risks with the pitch to Ted Turner. Another risk, and just thinking outside of the box decision that you made was, okay, everybody's talking about esports today, but 4 years ago you put esports on, the E-League on TV. Why did you do that? And how did you first come across esports? And I'm sure 4 years ago people thought you were crazy for doing it. Now it's much more mainstream.
Well, a lot of deals that I've done in my career, we can talk about that maybe later, with the NCAA tournament, which was one of the most crazy deal structures I ever put together in my life. And I still think today will be unique, in the sense I don't think it'll ever be replicated by any other thing with our relationship with CBS. But on esports, I have to give my son, who's now 23, a little bit of credit. I went into his room 5 years ago, knocked on his door. The door was closed. We were living up in Westchester in a house, and I was, trying to get his attention for something. He wasn't answering, and I knocked on his door again. Didn't answer. I opened up his door. He's got his headphones on. He's looking at his computer. God knows what I thought he was working at. And I leaned in and I touched him, because he jumped up like, scared, and he took his headphones off and was, "Dad, what are you doing?" I said, "Well, what are you doing?" And he says, "I'm watching Twitch." And I go, "What's Twitch?" And he goes, "Well, Twitch is where we all watch we watch gamers play games." I go, "Are you kidding me? You're actually watching other people play video games?" And he goes, "Yeah." And I go, "That's stupid." And he goes, "No, it's not stupid." He goes, "You go to Ranger games, you watch other people play hockey. Why is it any different? I love, to me, this is awesome." So I said, okay. So I said, "Go ahead, continue to do it." I sat on his bed for 45 minutes and watched him engage with this experience, this esport experience. And he was screaming with his friends, and he was, like you were watching a hockey game, okay? Like he was, when they were doing something great, he was leaning back in his chair and screaming. And the next day I went back into the office, and I asked my M&A group, Merger and Acquisition Group, to give me a whole report on this thing called esports. I want to know about the gaming side, the team side, the industry side. And, 4 weeks later, they put this deck on my desk, and we ended up realizing we don't own a gaming company, so we couldn't put out a game. We didn't own any teams. We couldn't support any teams, but we could start a league. And we planted a flag and came up with the word E-League. And we started a deal with IMG, and we got teams. We had competitions, and I worked with gaming companies to have a major. And in fact, Counter-Strike gave us their major, which was unbelievable, for a new founding league called E-League. And we built a studio in Atlanta. We had 300 people that could come a night. We put it on TV, and we put it on Twitch. And it's still running today. That was our entry into esports, and we were the first. And again, very risky, because to be honest with you, it did not do very well in television, and certainly even today is not doing well in television. And there are many reasons for it. One of the reasons is I'm not exactly sure that's the demographic that will come to TV at all, even if it's great. But I also think we didn't go into the betting fast enough. And I think betting in E-League is going to be a big, big part of the growth of esports when people can really do prop bets and understand how to bet with these games. But it's here, it's growing, it's a global sport. I would consider esport. I think there's 4 global sports in the world. One is soccer, one is NBA basketball, one is what I would call martial arts or combat sports, and then last is esports.
It's amazing how fast it's happened. Talking about wheeling and dealing, you mentioned the NCAA tournament deal, so let's talk about it. I think probably until this March, we took for granted how awesome of a deal it was, right? I mean, it is. You can watch. I'm always on the March Madness Live app because you can just bounce back and forth between every single game. How did all that come together? And, March Madness, it's something that all of us look forward to.
Yeah, so CBS had done a terrific job. They had an 11-year deal with the NCAA tournament, and this was back in 2010. And there was an RFP that went out from the NCAA tournament to see if they were going to figure out how to either expand it to 96 teams from their 60, I think it was 64 teams at the time. So they sent out an RFP, and we were one of the companies with the RFP. And I came up with an idea that we should actually air all the games across all of our networks and not just have one network. At the time, they called it regional feeds. If you were a Duke fan and lived in LA back in 2010, you would probably see more Pac-12 games being in LA, even though you were a Duke fan. And they regionalized all the games through one network called CBS. And CBS controlled the production of it, meaning if it was a blowout, they may switch that Duke game in or Duke game out, but it was all controlled by CBS. And the idea that I had was, or we had, that ultimately all the games should be aired, simultaneously, and the consumer should decide what games they want to watch. And if they want to watch a 45-point blowout, if I was Syracuse and we were up by 45 points, I'd still want to watch Syracuse, hopefully not blow that lead. So I had the idea of putting that all together. And CBS and ourselves, they realized they needed Turner because they didn't have enough networks. And we realized that we needed CBS because they had a broadcast network, which at the time I really thought was necessity for the NCAA to actually try to close the deal. So the uniqueness of that deal is that we were 50-50 partners all the way through. And what I told Sean McManus, who was my counterpart at CBS, was we didn't want a cable package. We weren't going to split this where they got the semifinals and the finals, and we got, the early rounds, which was typically how packages were developed when cable companies did joint deals with broadcast companies. And so this was the first one where it was truly 50-50. So every other year we alternate the finals and semifinals. And we actually decide as a group which games in every round goes on what networks. And because it's such a true partnership, imagine this. If Jim Nantz is running a game on CBS and, I have Marv Albert or one of our other broadcasters, Kevin Harlan, on TNT, and it's a blowout on CBS, Jim Nantz will say, hey, guys, we've got a blowout here, but on TNT, they've got tie score and it's overtime. Go there. And when we ever seen one broadcaster tell another broadcaster to go somewhere else? And we had flashes. We came up with this red flash button on the top of the screen, which will show you that if scores were close. We developed, as you just talked about, the March Madness Live app. March Madness On Demand is as we called it later, which has been a template for a lot of other media companies to try to replicate. The sales organizations, every dollar was split 50-50. So it didn't matter if an ad went on CBS or an ad went on TNT, we all pooled it. And this is the first time in history that was truly a 50-50 partnership. And Sean and I had this mantra. We said, I would make decisions on production and crew and talent. And we literally said, we're going to look at the consumer first. we're going to make the decision. What would the consumer want? Not what we would want, not what Turner would want, not what CBS would want. What would the consumer want? And if we stayed with that mantra, it was easy to make decisions because we made these decisions around the consumer and not around our company's P&L. And so I'd say to this day, that's probably one of the most unique and never be duplicated, I think, media deal. And it runs the longest I've ever seen in any media deal. It runs through 2032. So I said when I signed it back in 2011, I don't think I'll be here to watch the renewal happen. And I guess I got that answer right.
Well, I know we're all really looking forward to March 2021. I think it'll be the most watched March Madness of all time, I'm sure, after missing out this year. One thing I've learned about the sports business is that everyone has a reputation, right? You say someone's name and a couple things immediately pop to their head. One thing that people say about you from being in the business is how good of a communicator you are, and even one-to-one. So there are some people, I think, in the business who don't respond to emails, don't respond to phone calls. You have the reputation, I don't know if you know this, but of being a great responder to emails. It's not an assistant reading your emails or answering them for you. You respond, you're running Turner Sports and can respond to the emails at 11 o'clock at night within 5 minutes. Why do you do that? Why is that so important to you? And, I think that's something that I didn't understand in college. I would take 2 days to respond to an email.
Yeah. It boils down to two things. One is I learned this very early on in life. Treat people the way you want to be treated and you'll be very successful. And, everybody's out there that's written a note or written an email and not gotten a response. You don't know whether that's because they're pissed at you, they didn't read it, maybe it didn't get there. There's millions of things that go on in your head and you're anticipating that answer. And so to me, that was treating people the way I wanted to be treated. But also when you sit in a role of a president or really any position, if I don't answer that email, that particular responsibility or job is if he's saying, listen, can I get this guy or not get this guy? Or can I do this or not do that? Or I'm thinking about it and I don't respond, then that whole system is shut down. Everything behind him, he can't do what he's got to do because I haven't responded, because I am the person that says to him, yes, no, or indifferent or go, right? And if I'm slowing the whole system down, then our company can't move. We can't move quick enough. And so I always believe that I need to respond back so people know that I saw it, so they're relieved, or I have to answer their next step that they have to do so then they can do their job all the way down the line. And I don't understand how you can let something sit for a week when that means your whole company is sitting for a week. And in this day and age, it's just not right. So I look through all my emails before I go to bed. And if I haven't at least answered or figured out what I was going to say in the morning, ultimately, I did.
How can a young alum or young person in the business develop good mentors and ask them for feedback?
There's a respect that has to happen, right? You just don't develop them. You have to earn them. You have to earn a mentor. You have to have somebody who wants to be your, I use the word rabbi, but wants to be your guide, your helper. You just don't say, hey, can I be your mentor? Or will you be my mentor? Excuse me. It happens naturally. And it happens out of respect. And it happens, are you the go-to guy for him? Are you there for him? Mentors are both ways, I'm going to help mentor you, but you need to help me. And I think it's a two-way street. And you need to earn it. You don't just ask for it. You have to earn it.
Yeah. When you're running Turner, you talked a little bit about your philosophy towards emails, but are there any other, and even now today, are there any other daily habits that you have personally that, are really critical to your success?
Communication, you mentioned that. I definitely had a list on the side of my desk. First of all, phone calls. You must return phone calls. Now, I don't return them all in the same day like I do my emails, but I certainly don't let a phone call all the way down. It doesn't matter who called and what level called. I return phone calls. I think that's imperative that you communicate back to the people, even if it's going to be a no. Even if you call back, go, listen, I am completely not interested. But I didn't want to let you know that by not calling you back was not the way to do it. So returning phone calls, open door policy. I always had this at Turner. I got in very early. Life's different now, but I certainly got in, and I wanted to either read my emails, right? When you didn't have a BlackBerry or an iPhone or things of that nature, you went in to read your emails. And I also got to read the paper and things like that in the morning. I got myself caught up to what the world was going on. But no matter what, and that was always at around 7:30. I always said my door is wide open from 7:30 to 9, meaning anybody could walk in. My assistant, an intern, a president from another division. My door was always open from 7:30 to basically 9 if you wanted to have a conversation, because I didn't book my calendar then. And that open door policy, I had a lot of great conversations around businesses and things of that nature. So, I think open door policy and making sure that you hear every level of your organization, and not stay at the ivory tower, as everybody says. You come down and really understand what's happening in your organization, then you're going to be better off. And, that's important. And again, I told you I had 22 different jobs at Turner, right? You don't stay, in order to grow, you're going to have to go to different organizations, different divisions, learn, ask questions. That's so important, because if you stay in just one area, you're not going to really grow and use all parts of your brain and continue to grow.
I want to get a little bit into some of your new ventures. When you left Turner, I think you put on Facebook that you were taking a gap year, which I thought was funny. And I know you also sent an email to friends, colleagues across the business, and something to the effect of look out for Levy 2.0. So, what have you learned about yourself after you've left Turner and going forward now? And what is Levy 2.0 going to look like?
So I got a lot of great advice from a lot of good people. So I was almost like every student coming out of college. What do I want to do now? And I didn't have a role or responsibility. I mean, I left AT&T in a very, very positive way. John Stanky and I did not leave angrily. I had a great 32 years. It just wasn't the vision and things that I wanted to do. And I wanted to be possibly a CEO at another company. And he was completely understanding, and, it was fine. So there was no anger, and that was a good thing. And then, I literally took this advice: speak to everyone, commit to no one. And it was really going around not knowing what I wanted to do next, but I really wanted to listen to a lot of people. And I did lunch, breakfasts, dinners, coffees, and every single person, whether they called me or I called them, and a lot of them called me just to say, hey, I would love to have a breakfast with you, pick your brain, whatever the case may be. I wrote down every person's name of every lunch, every breakfast, every dinner, every coffee, who it was, what organization he was from, and what advice he or she gave me that I thought was interesting. And I put it down on a piece of paper, and I just compiled these 75 different meetings. And I kind of went through them to see what interested me and what I thought was interesting, or a quote someone said, or, some person said to me, listen, David, you're already in the Hall of Fame. You've made it. Make sure your next job is something that you have a passion for, somebody you really want to work with or for, and make sure you're set up for success. You don't want to go into a situation where you're not going to be successful. Okay advice. I don't mind taking risks as long as I'm, I have the resources to actually make it work. And I wouldn't mind going to a turnaround company if that was something that interests me. So, the two things that I'm involved with right now, which is really helping me kind of shape what I want to do next. One is a company called Rain, which is a merchant bank. And I get to see a ton of deal flow. They're involved with many, many different companies. They have 3 huge funds. They have businesses from, Margaritaville to DraftKings, to Imagine, which is a content company. And they do a lot of, advising, consulting to media companies and sports companies. And so that's kind of fell in my right in my zone there. And they do a lot, and they see a lot of deals. So I'm involved in looking at different projects and different things for them as a senior advisor. The other one is Arctos Partners. A gentleman I knew growing up in this business, Doc O'Connor, launched this new venture fund, which is actually, they raised $600 million and probably will get up to $1 billion over the next couple of months. And they are investing. They're doing passive investments in small equity deals with professional sports teams. So passive investments in sports teams around small equity investments. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5% equity stakes in professional teams. And my role is to help them work with the commissioners of all the leagues, as well as the team owners, to make this a vehicle for them to use as an opportunity. So both of those they're not similar, but one is certainly using one side of my brain, which is my relationships with the commissioners and the owners, and working on that side. And the other side is deal flow and financial deals and working with media companies. So right now it allows me to see a lot of different opportunities and decide what I may go back into an operating role. I may not. I may stay on the investing side, but it keeps me tied to a lot of the people that I really care about.
I think we're gonna have to talk to Sandy about maybe making a book or something about those 75 meals you had and all the lessons you learned. I mean, that sounds really awesome. Kind of one that just popped in my head. So you joined Arctos about just a few weeks ago, really.
Yep.
So could you give everyone on the call some advice on how you've been working remotely with them and, getting to know people remotely? Because I think a lot of people will be starting jobs without having an HR presentation in person, without going to lunch.
It's a great question. That's a really, really good question, because both these roles happened during the pandemic. I mean, Rain was, I believe, the end of March, and Arctos was about 3 weeks ago, as you're right. So I've literally not been in either offices. I have not met the people. I know what I love to do is to walk the hallways, introduce myself, know where the bathroom key is, all the things that, you would normally do in an organization. It's really, really interesting to onboard, with really not even entering the building. But, I think, what we're all finding out is technology works. I mean, here we are we're not in, in that casino in upstate New York, but we're sitting here doing it right now. I think the world is going to change. I think everything was happening anyhow. This is just escalating it much faster. Video conferencing. I was doing video conferencing when I was running international from 1994 to 2002. In the beginning, I flew everywhere. I went to Asia, Europe, Latin America, spent, weeks upon weeks away from my family to introduce myself to my organization, or to open up a new office in Singapore, or to buy a television station in China, as I mentioned. But then, my last 3 years running international, I was doing a ton of video conferencing. I already had that established relationship. And so I didn't think I needed to actually travel as much as I used to. And so I'm very used to the business side of having a Zoom call. It wasn't called Zoom then, but we did a lot of video conferencing. So, the advice I have is that, the kids today, this is their technology. This is what they grew up with. I mean, my kids didn't grow up. My younger son doesn't even turn on the television. He watches, he does everything from his computer. So it's not as hard. Maybe it's harder for a 50-year-old, 57-year-old executive to get used to onboarding in a new way, but it's not unusual for kids coming out of school and things of that nature. It's a little bit harder to form that one-on-one relationship and to start bonding the way you normally would bond. But as I said earlier, you know, I think we're going to see things move quickly. I think as you know, the media today is so skewed one way or the other, depending on how you're looking at it and what agendas. But if you really dig down to the facts, you know, you're going to find that, you know, coronavirus, you know, if you have a healthy immune system and you're young and athletic, or you're young and feel good, you know, you're very, 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 very small likely to die and even get any kind of symptoms. And as this develops and we get a vaccine, I think things will get back to what I would call a new normal, but they will. And I believe fans will be in stadiums again. I really do. And I think people will go to concerts. And I'm on a very positive side that this too is something that we needed to do. We had to do it. And we'll come out of this stronger and better.
Good. I'm optimistic too, so I'm glad you are. Last one from me, and then we have some Q&As that have come in. We're almost at 2 years, I think, since sports gambling started to become legalized in some parts of the country. I think so many people are still trying to understand it. You know, when you think of the industry and where it is and where it's going, what do you think about?
I think if I'm coming out of school, I'm focused. Like, you know, people say, you know, I started off telling people they should get in the cable business. And then, you know, I said everybody they should get into mobile business. I think the digital business was a huge opportunity. And now I think the sports betting business is a huge, huge opportunity. You know, here it's very simple. You know, the math just says it. The data shows it. If you bet on a sports game, you're 90% more likely to watch it. If you're 90% more likely to watch it, you're more engaged. If you're more engaged, it means the ratings are going to be higher. The ratings are higher, that means advertising sales are going to go up. If advertising sales goes up, that means your property is worth more. You mean your franchise value is worth more. If your franchise values are worth more, your media rights are worth more. And it's just it's an endless chain of what I believe is the future. You know, and certain sports like baseball, you know, could bring back the younger fan if they were able to bet on pitches and home runs and balls and strikes. And I think what's happened, listen, you know, I think it's going to happen faster now because these states, I bet you their budgets and their P&Ls are broken right now. What they had to spend on the pandemic and what they may have to spend now with the riots and the protesting. The state's budgets are going to be hurt. And I think they're going to approve sports betting faster than they ever would, only because of the taxes and what, you know, and so forth. So I think you're going to see sports betting grow at an exceptional rate. I think mobile devices and 5G, the streaming that's going to come across, as long as you can solve latency, which is, you know, making sure there's no delay from what your phone has versus that, I think your prop bets are going to be there. And I think it's going to be a big integral part of sports. What we don't want is to run the integrity of sports. And there has to be a balance to that. You don't want to have the integrity ruined in sports in any way, shape, or form. So there's going to be a balance of what kind of prop bets you want to put on it. So bad things don't happen in that department. But putting integrity aside and so forth, I think it's a big part of the future of sports.
Super fascinating your point about, you know, maybe the states expediting the legality of this so they can make a little bit more money with everything that's gone on the last few months. So some Q&As. Got one from Justin Fishman. He wants to know, what would you consider to be your greatest strength and your greatest weakness?
That's a great question. I never, you know, I think you should have a quick answer for that. I don't. I think my greatest strength is I build consensus, but I also make decisions. Meaning I may already have a decision in my head, but I want to make sure I'm right or I believe we're going in the right direction. So I build a consensus around my team leaders, making sure that we're all on the same page. That doesn't mean I change my mind, but I do when they make the right points. I think you have to be willing to change. Meaning, if I thought we were all going to go left, we're all going to go left. And they convince me that right's probably the right way, I'll go right. I don't have a problem leaving a meeting, changing where I thought we were going to go. But I do like to try to build consensus, but I also like to make decisions. And so I don't let things sit on my desk in the sense where we got to keep moving. And even if I'm wrong, I don't mind then changing my decision, even if I was wrong. So that would be my strength, is to make decisions and be leader, but also try to build consensus and to allow change. My biggest weakness, my biggest weakness is probably my attention span. And I'll leave it at that.
Good stuff. One from Harrison here. What personal values did you prioritize when assessing what management tactics you wanted to use when you first took over Turner?
Can you say that again, just because I want to make sure I get.
What personal values did you prioritize when you took over Turner to assess your management tactics and your management style?
So I'm a big believer in trust. You need to trust the people around you. I'm loyal. I like loyalty within the organization, and I like trust. You got to have the people around you that you can trust, because if I'm off doing 5 other projects, I don't have to think about what's going on with the other 5 that I'm not really paying attention to, because I trust the people that are in their positions. So I think those are 2 big characteristics. I think you need diversity in an organization. I've been a huge proponent of diversity in my entire career at Turner, whether white, black, women, male, it didn't matter. It's the best person for the job. I had many females, maybe great executives that honestly, I'm still very close to all of them, who have great careers right now. And so you need to pick the best person, and you need to have diversity. I don't think an organization can actually be successful without diversity.
Let's see. I think this is a good one from Nick. How do you motivate your employees while also balancing delegating responsibilities to them?
Delegating is not, first of all, delegating is something that actually all executives should be very, very good at, because you can't think what the next, since I played hockey, I have to throw it in there. My favorite Wayne Gretzky is, you don't follow the puck, you go where the puck's going to be next. If you don't delegate, you can't go to where the puck's going next. You can't think outside the box. You can't think about what's going to be the future of your company. You can't think about the next strategy you want to do if you don't delegate. So delegation is actually something that is not a negative. In actuality, it gives the person below the responsibilities. Okay, so that person can grow, and then allows you to free yourself to do what you need to do from an organization standpoint. So I don't think delegation is a negative at all. In fact, if you're not delegating, it's probably a negative that you're not. That means you're too hands-on, you're too down deep. That means you're doing someone else's job. You shouldn't be doing someone else's job.
Evan Weinberg has a good one here. I think of one of the last major things you did before you left Turner. So the Match 2 was the most watched golf event on cable. How did the Match series in general, come to be?
First of all, I was flattered and honored to see that the Match 2, which we did a three event deal with Tiger and Phil, to see Match 2, earn for charity $20 million or build $20 million over a telecast, was amazing to me, because it wasn't designed at the time for a charity event. And then to have it be used in that format just, had goosebumps on me, because it was used for such a good cause. And I'm glad that the athletes, Tiger and Phil and Peyton and Brady, did what they did, because I think the country needed it. And I think it raised money for really, really a good cause for food banks and things around the world. So that made me feel great. It came about originally, CAA came to me, a gentleman named BZ, Brian Zuroff, who's very friendly with Phil Mickelson, and Steiny, who is Tiger's agent, Mark Steinberg, all had this idea of putting something together, but they were thinking at it more of as a free-to-air, match, 18-hole golf match. And my vision was very different. And so we had to merge the two ideas. And I thought this would be a great pay-per-view event. And it wouldn't be and I wanted to put a lot of gambling and betting aspects into it because I felt that that was really going to be the future of television, which we're just starting to get to. But I thought I could do it on a pay-per-view side because it wouldn't be as threatening, a couple years ago, and be able to really start talking about the prop bets. My vision was that Tiger would tee off and then that Phil would tee off and they'd both be 100 yards out or 125 yards out. And odds makers would say 2-1 odds, Tiger lands the green, 3-1 odds, Phil lands the green, closest to the pin, all that kind of, in the trap, up and down. All these things was in my head of how we should be able to televise this. And there was a lot of laws and things like that, the Wire Act and things and how you can bet and but the future is going to be like that. And it may be two different types of telecasts. But I had to get the PGA Tour to agree to allow those kind of gambling aspects. I had to get it sanctioned by the PGA Tour. We had to get a site for MGM. We had to get, Phil and Tiger to agree. And then the pay-per-view, which was very different. Why pay-per-view and so forth and so on. And it all got done. It was a lot of work on a lot of people. But I think it was a start of where I think the future, I talked to the people at DraftKings through Rain, and I talked to the people at FanDuel, and they told me back then that was the largest prop bets that they have seen on any given day for any given sport. And it happened again. With the match this time.
That's awesome. Charles Lerner wants to know, how can you say no to people who are giving you pitches, sales pitches, partnership pitches, but say no in a way that continues to build relationships?
That's a great question. I think you say no in this is why it's not working for me. You have to be honest. If it's no, just for the sake of being no, then you're just, but you have to give a reason. This doesn't fit in my portfolio. I don't have the budget for it today. This doesn't fit with my brand. Come back with another idea. You could, saying no, I always tell as a sales guy, when I was running Just Sales and we used to do call sheets. And I remember those call sheets and, some guys would leave, this one deal on his sheet and he said, well, he hasn't gotten back to me. I go, take that off your sheet, because the best answer a sales guy can get is a yes. The worst answer a sales guy can get, you think, is no, but it's actually no answer. The second best answer you can get is a no. You know why? Because then you ask the next question. Why is it a no? And if you can't solve that, then it should be a no. But if you can go back and solve why it's a no, then you may be able to make it a yes. But you don't know whether it's a no until they tell you it's a no. And a lot of people try to avoid the no. And that's where you get on your call sheet. He's not getting back to me. I haven't heard yet. And, those are called no's. But you're not getting the reason why. And so, when you give a no, you should give a reason why it's a no.
I think we could talk to you for hours, and I know so many of us have learned a ton today. Anything else you want to touch on that we haven't discussed?
Nope. I just love the orange. I love the Cuse. I hope we all get back to sports quickly. We need it. We need it in this country. And I think we all need to think about how we're going to make change, including myself. Racism is real, and we need leaders to stand up and understand that. And that's all I'd say.
David, thank you. Thank you to the Syracuse Sport Business Conference. Ben and Jack, anything else on your end?
No, thank you guys so much for joining. We really appreciate your time and insight. And I know I'm speaking for everybody as well. Go Orange.
Kevin, we'll talk soon. Thanks, everyone.
Absolutely. Go Orange. Thank you, guys.